Welcome back. Today we are going to be taking a look at the Sky Guardian update and everything new for all the air players among us. Before we get started today, thank you to all my YouTube members as well as my Patreons and everyone looking to get this decal to put on the vehicle. You can do so by using my discount code down below, and with any purchase you will get this decal. You will find it under special logo types and then you will find yourself a nice little skill issue. Let's get started today with USA, first nation in slot. They will get the F4S, and the F4S is essentially just a better F4J. It does get leading edge slats, it does not get any skins unfortunately, but if you go into a test drive, test flight, or of course you start playing the game altogether, if you deploy your flaps, you will see that the slats come out. Now this is not the Agile Eagle package, it is not as maneuverable, but it comes pretty damn close. The main issue is the gun pod right here. It weighs you down, it adds a lot of drag, but it does get a gun at least. You don't have to fly around with your dick in your hand, and you get quite the loadout. It's not quite the best, but it's now among the best Phantoms that you can find. The F4S gets 4 AIM 9H's, 2 AIM 7F's, inner and outer, so you get 4 in total, and then you get the gun pod. Now you can carry them a little bit differently. What you can do is say, I want an AIM 7F on the outer pylon, I want an AIM 7F on the inner pylon, and I want more AIM 7Fs. You can carry 6 of them, and yes, you can see you can do it like this. The thing is, if you then click this one, it says you aren't able to. If you then save it, you'll see that they will be carried on the pylon slot of the heat seekers. So you are essentially looking at simply a better F4J. You get better missiles in terms of the heat seekers. They're not too big of a difference, but the main difference is going to be the maneuverability. Is this the best Phantom? No, that still goes to another nation, but we will reach that in due time. Then we reach Germany, which gets 2 new vehicles. It gets the Hunter F58. I made a video on this thing yesterday, but to summarize it, this thing is essentially a British FGA-9 that we all know. So you get a Hunter with the best engine, you get the best loadout because it has 2 AIM 9Js. Yes, the J, not the G. Very, very good. Not the best range, but they're pretty damn strong at 9.3, and you get flare. So you essentially are looking at the best Hunter in the bracket. And it's in Germany. It is, unfortunately speaking, what's it called? A squadron vehicle. And you do get 2 little skins. I don't like that the belly is different on this one, so I just went for the Polish flag instead. Pretty damn good plane right now. It might go up in BR because it's performing too well, but it might also go down because everyone is GEing it and thinking it's a good plane and then doing horribly in it, absolutely tanking the stats. I cannot tell you what this thing is gonna do. It should go up in BR, but there's a lot of planes that should go up at 9.3, so it might just stay there, but it might also drop because it's very easy to access. People know that it's good and they are gonna rush it and basically become a premium player that bought their way into top tier. So I'm not sure what this thing is gonna do. It might go up, might go down, it might stay, but in general it's a pretty damn good plane. And then also it gets some things called they're just Mavericks. I can't pronounce that. The FLZ LWF LB82 air to ground missile. It's a Maverick. It's pretty good for ground RB. So you know, Germany stays winning yet again. And then we reach the MiG-29. Unfortunately, this one doesn't get a camo either, but what it does get, and no, it's not better than the Russian one, it's a carbon copy, it gets a new flight model. So let's take a very quick look at it with minimum fuel. You also want to run ground bells currently. I'll get into that a little bit more in depth slightly later. But the flight model of the MiG-29 has been vastly improved, and I will make a video on the German MiG-29 that you see right here, and I will compare it directly to the old version, and you will see, if you are an avid MiG-29 player, that especially at low speed, the flight model has been changed quite drastically. So let's go up until about 800 kilometers an hour, and luckily we are on min fuel, so it should get us there rather quickly, and then we start stamping on the elevator. Now you can tell that it actually starts turning quite well. It pulls a lot of AOA now, and it's just all around better. The flaps also do not kill your performance anymore. You can see that it gives you a little bit of boost in the turn capability. Before, if you pop the flaps, it would absolutely kill your AOA, and it made you basically a sitting duck. You should never use them. Now they might actually get some use out of them. I need to test these a little bit better still. But the flaps actually work now. Of course, they still have the same drawbacks as other flaps do. Where, well, if you use them too much, you will find yourself out of energy. The new flight model is definitely welcome. And, well, the MiG-16, the F-16 also got a slight change in the flight model, but I'll show you that when we get there. Then we reach Germany. I just came from Germany. We have this absolute abomination of a plane. Hazy told me, hey, you have to review another BIS, and I was actually tearing my eyes out just to notice that it's a little dinky prop. This is not going to be a great vehicle, but it's also rank 1 premium, so you shouldn't really expect too much from it. If you have this thing right here, infinitely better guns especially, because the PV ones, they just kind of leave some things to desire. No skins either. And then we reach the Yak 141. I already made a review on this if you are interested. The short summary is, it's hella slow, it has good missiles, it dumps a lot of speed, but it is pretty damn maneuverable. So it's not horrible, it's definitely a bit of a goofmobile, it's not very good. You can make it work, but for RRB it's simply too slow, and once people start catching on how to fight this thing, you just have to react to people. And the issue is, because it loses so much speed, it really just handles like a souped up VTOL, and that's basically what it is. If you have flown the Harrier GR7, you know what I mean. You don't have the highest top speed, you have pretty good missiles, you are pretty maneuverable, but if they make one pass on you and you need to go defensive, they will simply just run away from you and you will be energy trapped. Now this thing has some radar missiles, it has the R27ERs, and no, it cannot carry 4 anymore, you can only carry 1 on each side of the inner pylon. Then the outside pylon, you can choose between R27Ts, R27Rs, and in the inner pylon you can choose between all 3 variants depending on what you want. So let's take a quick look at it. You have quite the options here, but it's all not that special. The VTOL capability is of course a little bit of a gimmick. You can use it to recover a dead plane basically, but it is pretty damn annoying to land because it's kind of unstable. What you can do, however, if you VTOL to 50%, you can still use your afterburner. The second you go over the 50%, the afterburner cuts off and you lose a bit of power. So if you are on the cusp of it, try to push for 50. It will give you a lot more trust. Then we go to Great Britain, and Great Britain actually got quite a few things. We have the Lancaster, which has an updated model, and I'm actually going to go in and out of the test flight real quick to make it daytime again, because you can barely see the actual model of it. Well, while we're here, we might as well take a look at it. It is substantially better, and there's a little Among Us on the wingtip. Very cool indeed. And I need to actually leave the plane instead of, or leave the lobby instead of leaving the vehicle. So, new model for this one. The new model for the Beaufighter as well. They're all just updated. This one doesn't strike me too differently, but they are higher quality. I don't really see a difference. I do see the difference on the Lancasters, but the Beaufighters look virtually identical if you ask me. I also never really took a good look at them because, well, the Beaufighters, you know, I don't really have to look at those. And then we have the Tornado, and the Tornado here is, how do I say it? It's still a Tornado, but you actually have a decent loadout now. We are looking at 4 AIM-9Hs, scrap that, 4 AIM-9Ls, and 4 Skyflash Supertamps. Now they are not Skyflashes, they are not AIM-7Fs, they are kind of in between. They're pretty good, the radar of this thing is pretty ridiculous. However, at the end of the day, it is still a Tornado. It is not the best performing plane, but they did change something, which is very damn helpful. And you'll see it when I throttle up. Before, the engines were about 1200 degrees, which made it almost impossible to flare anything. Now, the engines will top out at about 900-ish. They might go a little bit over it, but they shouldn't go over 910-ish, roughly. Whereas before they were like 1230, I think. And this made it extremely painful to flare basically any missile. Additionally, the flare pods on this thing are not on the wingtips. So there is a little bit less of a massive gap where they can actually go through the flares. So this thing is a little bit more resilient when it comes to flares. Don't forget, and this also goes for the Yak 141, to set up your controls. We have wing sweep right here, for example. There's one thing you need to click. It's relative control. If you don't have that on, it's gonna look like this. Well, right now we have it on normal control. So we are gonna go to manual engine sweep. That's also another button you have to press. And you can tell that they sweep backwards. Now if I go to 0% sweep, it will gradually go out and it will stay on the 0% sweep. If I then go to the sweep controls and I turn off relative control, you might want to see what happens here. Now it's 50%, and when I press it, you can see on the bottom that the second I let go of the key, they will go back to original position. So they will not remember what you have pressed. They will only react to whatever button you have pressed down. So make sure that you actually have this set up properly, and otherwise it will not work. Same thing goes for the VTOL controls. Use relative controls, otherwise it's gonna be a toggle switch. Or not even a toggle switch, it's a hold switch, which is rather annoying to deal with. Next up is going to be, 1 second, we forgot something. We have a few camos on this thing. I like the first and the second one the most. Second one especially. It's a little bit of extra flair. And the third one is a little bit extra. It's a little bit of a hot rod machine. If you like this kind of thing, be my guest. At least this grey goes well with the wingtip. So you know I love that shit. Next up is Japan. And Japan actually does get a few skins. Pretty cool ones at that. It gets the F2 skin, if you can call it that. And we get the demonstration skin. Both of them are hella drip. And both of them are pretty damn good. Let's take a quick look at this one, because it also got a flight model change. The F-16 now compresses a little bit less. It's still a brick at high speed. Do not expect this thing to suddenly become... What's a good... Don't expect this thing to become a Vigan at high speed, for example. It's not that guy. It is still a brick at high speed. You're still kind of playing this thing the same way that you already were. But it's a lot more doable right now. And even at low speed it feels like it pulls a little bit more, but it's like 1 extra G. So in that regard it's not too noticeable. But at high speed it definitely is. And the reason I say you don't really feel it at high speed or at low speed is because, well, it already beat basically everything at low speed. You do want to be a little bit more careful about the MiG-29s now. But as you can see, 12G pull, it's a lot stronger than it used to be. Because it used to sit at 9. So now you can actually do something at high speed. You are not a complete brick. And you are not just completely stuck if there's someone behind you. You still want to make sure that you slow down when you get someone on your 6. You still want to make sure that you don't compress too hard and you give the guy too much position. But if you look at, for example, let's go here. Look at that, 10 Gs, 11 Gs. It used to just do 9, always 9. 9 was max. So it's a lot more maneuverable now. It is definitely noticeable, and I messed up my wingtip. Very cool. But we will fix that for the next video as well. So right now, it's a little bit better. Other than that, it's an F-16. Really not much to say about it. It does get some loadout options here that you might not see on the other ones, because this one also gets to carry the Mavericks like the Chinese one does. Everything else, it does not get extra countermeasures like the Chinese one does. And then for China, we have the F-84G. I don't really need to talk much about this. You can see the rewards on the screen, and it does get the same loadout options that you'll find on all the other ones. Don't do this, please don't. It does get rid of the wingtips, so if you don't like the fuel tanks like I never did, you can just carry them like this. But I would say, I don't say this is worth it. It's simply a little bit overkill, and HVARs aren't that great to begin with. No skins either. Very basic addition, because we already have, what is it, like 10? Now I'm kind of curious. 11. We have 11 F-84s in this game. Absolutely fantastic. And I don't even have the French one, I don't think. No, they removed the French premium. There what used to be, there's a 12th one that is kind of hidden. And next up is going to be Italy, and they received a P-47 D-30. Now this one is the exact same as the P-47 D-28, and the D30 in the Chinese tech tree. It's one of the best P47s in the game, and Italy also gets it now, and it's going to be in rank 4 after the SM92. Pretty damn good addition. It's definitely welcome in something like the Italian tech tree, because they don't really have planes like this. It's all 109s, they're all relatively slow. This is nice to have that high altitude support that you need in some games. The issue is that every nation has a P47. You also have like 12 of these, I believe. Let's take a quick look. Oh, that's the 74. 13. Fantastic. It turns into a little bit of a P47 simulator sometimes. Luckily nowadays it doesn't have an airspan anymore, and not everyone is spamming the hell out of it. So you don't see that many of them. But the P47 D30 is, for BR, probably the best performing one, other than maybe the American P47M. But the P47M, of course, is also at a much higher battle rating. So it's kind of a toss-up. I would say that the D30 or the D28 is a better aircraft. But you know, to each their own. Next up is going to be Front. And Front actually gets a few things. It gets the new and improved flight model for the F1C. Now the F1C is still an F1C, and it's still not going to be winning any rewards. But it's a hell of a lot better than it used to be. Why is this? Because they changed the thrust curve. So now it doesn't just blow away all of its speed and then just kind of becomes a sitting duck. You can actually somewhat fight people in it now. And I say this very cautiously, because keep in mind, it is still an F1C. This thing is not going to be winning any awards, and it's simply not that great. And of course the radar missiles on this thing are still absolutely pitiful. The DEFAs are still kind of wacky. And you have 2 magics, and that's going to be your main armament. So this thing, it's better, and don't get me wrong. If you are using the premium variant, it got the same treatment as well as the F1CT. Let's get it up to speed real quick, and I shall show you what this thing can do now. It's not too different, but I have to show you anyway, because you guys will want to see this. You can see that it actually pulls somewhat now. The speed still gets dumped away, but you can actually dogfight people somewhat reliable now. It's still not gonna win much, but if the skill gap is big enough, you can actually win now. Whereas before, the skill gap needed to be absolutely immense. Basically, you couldn't overcome it unless the guy was an absolute potato. So right now, we are at high speed. Let's pull a little bit. You can tell that it doesn't dump speed too hard until it goes a little bit slower. And then it does start throwing it out quite quickly. But it's definitely not as bricky as it used to be. It's still not gonna be good. And I'm gonna say this 20 more times. It's still an F1C. But as you can see, it holds its speed somewhat now. The second you go very slow, of course, it still becomes into an absolute shit brick. But hey, what can you expect of the French? Other than, of course, the Mirage 2000. So it's a little bit better, but all in all, it's basically the same thing. You just need to be... There needs to be less of a skill gap if you want to actually succeed. Now, let's look at a new feature as well. Just kidding, this one doesn't have it. Yeah, I know you've been watching me press that button. I'll show you at the end. So this thing gets a new, slightly better engine basically. And then we reach the Mirage 2000. And you can see this massive abomination on the bottom of the aircraft, and that is going to be a gun pod. Now, if you have seen my video on this where I got an ace in it before the gun pod was added, pretty goofy video. I got like a kill with the AS-30, I got a kill with the rocket pod and the magics. But now we actually have a gun that shoots through your gear. Very cool. This thing actually might become somewhat decent now. Of course, keep in mind this thing is gonna add a lot of weight, a lot of drag, and there's still DEFAs. So you're still gonna absolutely struggle. But hey, it has some good power. It has some good fire rate. And they won't fly through your rounds as easy as with the normal DEFAs. And that's simply because they're actually mounted closely together. And they feel a lot more accurate. I'm not sure if they actually are, but it does feel that way. Oh, look at that, 420 rounds. Very nice. It's almost, nah, that's still 1.5 months away actually. Scrap what I just said. Does this thing get a leading indicator? Well, I can't even lock him, so we can't even show you that. Wowee, we one-shot a bot. Absolutely fantastic. No, this one doesn't have it either. Unlucky. So yeah, gunpot for the Mirage 2000 DR1. Not an incredible change, but definitely welcome, considering having no guns is an absolute giga L. Skins, well, they're still the same. They're not different. Look at that shark mouth for all you hypers out there. This one shouldn't have one either. That one didn't have one either. Didn't forget it. J34 is still ass. Yep, nothing here. And then we reach the Kunas 2000. Now we are looking at the best Phantom in the game currently. And why is that, you might ask? Well, we all know the F4 Kai. Right? The F4 Kai has 4 AIM-9Ls, 4 AIM-7Fs, and guess what? It's an absolute brick of a plane. I do like the skin more, but that's not gonna be enough to make me fly it. The Kunas 2000 is essentially an Kai, but it gets the F4E flight model. So you get the best Phantom flight model with the best loadout. What a great compromise. What is this thing bad at? Well, I hate the skin, but I mean, if that's it, that's really not an issue. You get an internal gun, you get leading edge slats, and this one is actually the Agile Eagle package. And because you don't have an external gun, you're not weighed down as much. This thing, it's still a Phantom, don't get me wrong. It is still not the most maneuverable plane. You are still hella heavy with all the missiles strapped on, especially on high fuel. But you get the F-16 radar, you get AIM-7Fs, and you get AIM-9Ls. And this thing, in terms of Phantoms, has literally everything going for it. And you can tell this radar is absolute rock solid. The MiG-15 started kind of notching us, and he's notching us right now. But look at that small ass window that is notching us at. The missile lost track before the radar did, which is absolutely insane. It's the same stuff. It does have a different name as the Kai radar, but as of right now, they are identical. Let's look at this. Look at that. We have some ejection seats. We are finally able to show you. Where is my parachute? Will it despawn? I have no idea. Let's get back to the hangar. That's a nice little loading screen that lasted half a second because my PC is too quick. Fantastic. First world problems, am I right? No camouflage either, unfortunately. But all in all, this thing just has the best of all the Phantoms. It's a little bit of an L that it comes in the Israeli tech tree and comes after the other Kunas. This one is kind of Kunas. This one is pretty good. Kunas 2000 makes the absolute difference here. And if you are seeing them in the wild, you probably won't see them too much yet. They might catch you off guard because you are not aware of the fact that it's actually the new one that has AIM-7Fs and very good radar and AIM-9Ls. AIM-9Ls aren't as flare resistant as they used to be, but they are still AIM-9Ls. They have good range, all aspect, and they have at least some flare resistance. And that's it for all the new stuff. There are some few changes, however, and first of all is gonna be the lead indicators. And it works by simply locking onto your enemy, and your ballistic change thingy, your reticle, will start bouncing around. Now this is not very helpful if they are maneuvering and they are reacting to your movement. However, if they are flying perfectly still, yeah, it ends up working quite nicely. 1.21, absolutely zero effort. Same thing works if they are pulling in a very straight manner. Just look at this F-16. The F-16 is kind of rolling around and then the reticle becomes inaccurate. He pulls straight. I shoot like 5 rounds and it all hits the center of his plane. Works fantastically. Here are the new animations for the ejection seats. I've shown you this one a little bit earlier in the video as well. And then sometimes, I mean, it's kind of weird. You're just flying around. You see a missile coming in. I can't really dodge in a direction here, so I'm going to eat the missile. And no, that's not edited. You just get a singular frame of the missile in your plane and then you are in the parachute. This is of course because your pilot cannot die and it's at the very worst just unconscious. And if you are looking at the Mach cone right now, it's a little bit different. The main thing is it's actually animated, and you definitely notice this, especially if you slow it down and you have a very slow transition. You can see that there's actual particles now, it has an actual animation, whereas before it looked like a PNG that kind of got slapped on your vehicle if you reach the threshold. So it looks a lot better. It's also there less long. If it's there, it has a smaller threshold for when it pops up, and it looks better, but it obstructs more of your view when it's actually there because it's quite a bit bigger. I wish you could turn it off. Looks cool. Shouldn't obstruct your view in the cockpit. Why is it obstructing my view when I'm flying the vehicle? But you know, it is what it is. And lastly, I want to talk about the bigger maps. They are both better and worse. Why are they better? Because you have more of a playground now and you have an actual sandbox in which you can operate your top tier vehicle. Why is it worse? It goes to too low of a BR where it actually just becomes a nuisance. And even at top tier right now, because the objectives are still in the same spots, the bombing bases, the ground units, they're all in the middle. And guess what ends up happening? Everyone still flies to the left. Everyone still flies to the middle of the map after reaching the middle of the left. And then it still turns into a massive stinking furball. It changes nothing in the gameplay right now. And all it does is prolong your matches. And the match where you're just flying in towards the middle of the map, if that part of the map takes longer, or that part of the match takes longer, guess what? You're not actually getting more RP for it. So you are just looking at less research overall, because it's just dragging out the matches. I do like that if the fight develops, they can't run to the base instantly, because you are locked in a fight and you need to go quite far before you reach mine or their airfield. You have much more room to actually fly your plane now, which is great. However, at the start of the match, you are just looking at 4 extra minutes of absolute nothingness before the exact same scenario happens. And it's the same thing in the big EC maps. Let's be honest, people, it doesn't change much. All it does is fly around doing nothing. If they implement the bigger maps properly, sure, be my guest, it should be better. The maps are too small, I agree with you. The issue is, as of right now, it doesn't change anything other than the takeoff part where you reach your first enemy. And that adds nothing to the game. And then there is actually one last thing that I forgot to mention, and that is going to be Contrails, which are an absolutely fantastic addition to the game right now. We are looking at the new Contrails. The MiG-29 you can see on my right, just above my RWR logo thing that isn't going off. Now it is, but it was on the right. You see some Contrails. You see them in the background now as well. You see missile trails, you see the plane trails. And this just makes it so that the game, one, it looks better. And secondly, it gives you more of an idea where the enemies are. And I think planning is always a good thing. And it also gives space climbers a bit of a disadvantage. And let's take a look at these Contrails from your own perspective. Because do they actually look good if you get close to them? The answer is, yeah, they look alright. I do think they need a little bit of work. But I mean, it just adds a little bit of dynamicness to the game, whereas before it was just very static. You know, if you were at high altitude, all you had were the little vortices on the wingtips. Now you actually have some Contrails. Props have this as well, but you can actually spot them at range now, which is the big thing here. People can just climb the 17 kilometers and then just sit there all game. They will actually be visible. Because right now the spotting distance of dots is just way too low. It's simply not manageable. If I can see them on the radar, I should be able to see that dot. Of course, to a degree, I shouldn't be able to spot a dot from 25 kilometers away. But you know what I'm saying. Before, you were able to spot dots almost across the map. Nowadays, you have to basically barrel stuff them with your plane. It's like 12 kilometers-ish now. Like before, if you turned the radar on the F4E, you could see the enemy planes take off on Hokkaido when you were taking off yourself. Which, that might be a little bit too much. That's maybe a little bit excessive. But hey, at least it gave me the ability to find people. I never understood the problem of spotting. Why can I not see the enemy? Also some new missile trails, new explosion effects all around. At least it looks that way, you have more fuel explosions and stuff. It all feels a bit better here at top tier. Other than the maps that are simply bigger for the sake of being bigger. If they implement it correctly again, great change. As of right now, all it does is drag it out. But that's all I have for you today. I've been able to ramble for 30 minutes anyway, so I'm gonna be wrapping this one up. And you'll see me all tomorrow again with probably an F4S and an Kunas 2000 video.